Um,
So,
yeah, so I'm kind of coming to this from a uh practice methods that are kind of approaching Dzogchen.
mm-hmm,
That's kind of my general background these days. And primarily what I've been working with is something I think you're familiar with, the four Naujors. I
mm-hmm,
know you spent some time with Nakchang Rinpoche and Khandro Dechen.
mm-hmm,
Um, so yeah, this is essentially, four progressive steps or methods. The first one kind of stabilizes the experience of emptiness. The second one sort of reintroduces form. The third one kind of lets you in on the fact that they're sort of flowing one into the next and they're inseparable.
mm-hmm.
And then the fourth one is essentially where Rigpa is kind of integrated into every moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I
You
guess what
want
I'm,
you want to define Rigpa for our friends here who don't know that
yeah,
word?
Rigpa just sort of the natural, open, clear, original state of mind, sort of
Mm-hmm.
the what I hear you say, what I think of when you say, this natural, open awareness that's unaffected, the stage that's unaffected by the players.
Right, right,
So,
right.
so I guess what I'm curious about is how this approach is sort of different. If it's still kind of aimed essentially
Mm-hmm,
at those kind of final two steps,
mm-hmm,
or those final two methods, the sort of union of emptiness and form, and then that permeating everything in your day.
mm-hmm.
Uh, and just sort of how it gets easily and effortlessly and naturally there, kind of without these steps, because I'm from the West. I'm all about the shortcuts. Uh, so if this Yeah, Nakchung Rinpoche says, the first step, stabilizing emptiness, he says that's a very unnatural thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the steps after that get progressively easier. So I'm intrigued by this idea of sort of hopping the line and ending up in that place of,
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're talking about is essentially the non-dual awareness. So
Right.
yeah, I realize this is a whole bunch of nerdy language and very persnickety details, but
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of what's been on my mind as I've been working with your methods.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's great. I'm really glad you've brought this question into the group. Um, for me, it's always important to come back to what is your actual experience. What is your actual experience? Is it your actual experience that stabilizing emptiness requires effort?
No.
No, mine neither. Mine neither. You know, and Nukchung Rinpoche, I love deeply and respect deeply, and I know that there's a lot of teachers, who teach out of tradition, or particular um, threads of tradition where that's the understanding, where you got to work hard to stabilize emptiness, the essentially empty nature of awareness. Um, but I can't deny my own experience. And my own experience is it's the most natural thing in the world. Um, and that making effort to to stabilize emptiness is counterproductive, because any effort to stabilize it is emptiness. That's non-empty. That now you're filling up the room with all your effort.
Right. Well, I don't think the approach, maybe I put the words together in the wrong order. The result of noticing emptiness over and over again without effort
Mm-hmm.
is a sort of stabilized noticing. So,
Yeah.
noticing effortlessly moments of emptiness here and there,
Right.
eventually, with that method of silent meditation, you sort of get to the point where emptiness is what you notice the majority of the time. And then you move on to the second step where you kind of reintroduce form from the emptiness and back into the emptiness. So it's
Right.
not that it takes effort to stabilize the emptiness, but that's sort of the name that's used once you're
Mm-hmm.
resting effortlessly in emptiness for longer periods of time is
Yeah.
stabilized.
One thing I would say is that um, in in many systems, um, uh, you'll get this kind of things laid out in steps, um, and and sometimes you have to hang out with the teacher for a while and kind of digest and practice for a while before you find out that, oh, it was my assumption that those steps are sequential. That, okay, I have to do this and do this and do this and perfect this, and now I'm on to step two, and then I'm on to step three. Um, Again, if I look at my own experience, that's not the way it works. And I've asked some teachers who are much better versed in these in the the real Dharma texts than I am, and who've said, yeah, the when the things are laid out, in as these steps, they're laid out. It's because they're coming out of a philosophical tradition where things are laid out in uh, um, steps of understanding the whole thing, but that the practice is done holistically. That we're really all of those practices, in this case, the four Naljors, they all support each other, and they all kind of grow together. It's like like an embryo growing. It's not like, okay, now you grow the right arm, we're done with that, now we grow the left arm, now we work on the legs. The whole thing has to happen together. We can, for instance, the four noble truths, uh, the classical order doesn't make sense if we think of it chronologically, because it's right origin of suffering. I'm sorry, the suffering, then origin of suffering, then cessation of suffering, then the path to the cessation of suffering. That's not chronological. Chronologically, it should be first there's the origin, then there's the suffering, then there's the path to the cessation, then there's the cessation. It's all out of order if you look at it, you try to look at it chronologically. But what that is that's the philosophical order. That's the order of philosophical understanding. What's the first thing we notice? We notice, oh crap, I hurt. There's some life is hurting me. I'm suffering. And then the next step is to go, well, why is this happening? Where is this coming from? So we've gone suffering, right? Dukkha to origin of dukkha. And then, okay, oh, I thought it was coming from the outside. Turns out it's me that's doing it because I've been functioning so unskillfully. And that leads naturally to the next question. Well, then, oh, okay, if I just stop doing that, right, then that'll be the cessation of suffering. So far what we have is, ow, ow, that's the first noble truth. Ow, right? And then the second noble truth, oh, oh, it's me doing it. Oh, and then the third noble truth, well, it's me doing it, I stopped doing it. Ah. Now, in principle, we should be done. Ah, there's the cessation of suffering. But then what happens is 5 minutes later, ow, I'm doing it again because I've had so much practice. It's such a habit. So what do I have to do? Fourth noble truth, got to practice. Get back on the cushion, meditate for a while, and kind of unspool the habit of distracting myself from the inherent wonderful, problem-free, empty nature of being, and curling twisting myself up into the experience of suffering, and I have unspool that by just resting in this openness, and you know, rinse and repeat. Do you see what I'm getting at? Is that making sense?
I do. I think the what sort of is creative friction for me is this view that Dzogchen is a an approach of method, not of truth. So the methods are, since the four Naljors are the Noondro, the
Mm-hmm.
preliminary practices to
Right.
get to the
Right.
open, effortless, easy, non-doing period of actual resting and Rigpa.
Mm-hmm.
So they are, even though they are integrated with one another, they do, it's necessary to go in the order of the steps, which has always sort of bugged me because I'm not a big step follower.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Me too. Me too.
yeah.
And me too. Look, here's the thing. Here's the thing. What 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 do all the great teachers, Buddhists, non-Buddhists, what do they teach? Wisdom and compassion. Wisdom and compassion. Wisdom is live in a way that you're not multiplying suffering for yourself and others. What is compassion? Try to help others see their way clear to doing that. Okay? I mean, I'm another guy who's, I've been very fortunate in having some great teachers and reading some books and having some, experience on this path. And it seems to me, as far as I can see, what has turned out to be wisdom for me is this simple way of practicing that I've been practicing for a bunch of years, and I don't make any grandiose claims about the state of my consciousness, but I'll tell you, if you know offered me $1 million and all I got to do is go back to the way I used to be, there's no that's not even a question. There's no chance in hell. And compassion to me is doing what I can to help other people see how simple that is. I mean, some people are going to be drawn, whatever, some kind of karma, some kind of proclivity to follow these kind of, formalized steps and traditional, and there's a real beauty to some of these teachings for some, you know, just like some people will find, I'll find beauty in the language of Shakespeare or in the, in there is a real kind of almost like a poetic beauty in these teachings that I have a sense that you're an appreciator of that, as I am. But when it gets down to how can we help the most people, right, get rid of the most suffering in the least time, um, I, I, it just doesn't register for me. When I know it can be this simple, when I've seen it in with so many people, some of them had been, locked up for 30 years for doing really bad things, who I've seen them become just different people from doing this kind of simple practice.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, and also, uh, I don't know if you were in the session a week or two back. I told this little story, but so I'll tell it again. Um, my wife Yafa was on a retreat some years ago in Texas with a really revered Vajra, master of Vajrayana teaching. I can never remember his title. He's the 12th something, the 12th Drukpa something, I think. And my wife just always calls him the 12th guy. And I mean, a very revered teacher. He's really just esteemed as being at the pinnacle level of teaching. And what he taught them essentially was this kind of totally simple, totally stripped down, non practice practice. Essentially the same thing that we're doing here. And people were saying, well, but what about all the nundro? What about all the prostrations and all the repetitions of the mantra? Look, I've been accumulating, so many mantra repetitions, counting them out on my beads and so forth. And essentially what he said was, yeah, that's fine if you want to do that, but all that is to get you to here. All that is to get you to this simplicity. And if you can if you can hear your way clear to practicing with this simplicity, he said, you can take it from me. I know what I'm talking about. This is it. This is it. Everything else is to get you to there. And some people were, because they come from a classical, Vajrayana background like yourself, and they say, but there's all this stuff that says you got to do all these preliminary. You say, can we really practice it? Because in the, we've heard that in the Tibetan tradition, the pinnacle teachings, the Dzogchen teachings are only for, he said, if you're in this room, if you're hearing this, it means you're qualified to practice it. So I ain't going to argue with that.